Ebola panic setting in and ISIS fears becoming a reality. New York and New Jersey now quarantining anyone who comes in contact with Ebola victims in West Africa after a doctor in New York tests positive. And then there's those acts of terror. A soldier is shot in Canada. Police officers targeted and attacked with a hatchet in New York. All of it fueling calls in Washington to lift spending up to take these threats down. Is that the answer? Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Francis from the Fox Business Network, in for Brenda Butner, and this is Bulls and Bears. The Bulls and the Bears this week: Gary B., Jonas Max Ferris, and John Layfield, along with Gary Kaltbaum and Emily Tish Salzman. Welcome to all of you. Gary K., I'm going to start with you. Is spending more the answer?
Most definitely. Look, the number one function of government is to protect the folks. And when we're getting illnesses and diseases like this coming to the shores, when we have lone wolf terrorists now starting to grow, we have to do something about it. There is not enough money to even spend to get something like this done and watched over. And I think you spend all you can to make sure nothing happens there.
I don't know that you ever want to say to the government, spend all you can. I mean, right there, that is absolutely terrifying to me. Maybe we just have to get more focused and more serious. Emily.
Well, I think we need to be spending money smartly. I think you're absolutely right. You don't want to give a blank check. But particularly on the healthcare front, it's not like there's nothing we could do about this. We could be putting that money in a smarter way into preparedness. Preparedness, particularly in a health context, is something that really got decimated under the Budget Control Act last year. And this is something we need to be spending in a serious way. That way, we don't need to be deploying Department of Defense emergency medical SWAT teams into cities to be going in. They're ready to prepare for it themselves.
I don't know. It seems like we just need to minimize stupidity. I mean, Gary B., we finally have the governors, Cuomo and Christie, saying that if you're coming back from somewhere where you were exposed to people or treating people who had Ebola, you need to be quarantined for 21 days. That doesn't cost money. That's just common sense.
You're kind of like the guy that climbed the fence of the White House. Why don't we just have like a 20-foot fence to make it a little bit harder for him to climb? So you're right, Melissa. You know, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said we should fear when we give the government a blank check, because then they end up exceeding it. I think we do need to spend it smarter. You know, when you think of the budgets of the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense, that between the two of them, they should be fighting all this stuff. In fact, I know the Department of Homeland Security has Ebola fighting teams out there for just this case, in case someone made a chemical attack on us. Between those two, we have a bigger protection budget, if you will, than the next 10 countries combined. The money is there. We don't need to get more money. We need to spend it better and be a little bit more focused on what is causing us harm right now.
Jonas.
It could be too much money. Maybe they're acting these divisions like they got under control. They have $40 billion a year at Homeland Defense. Look, if you gave me $100 billion, I can't build a better search engine than Google just because I had more money. I don't have a plan. I don't have the resources or the brain power to do it. The government has this money allocated for these things. The fact that Homeland Security all these years is really no further along in this. Like, what was their plan to track somebody with Ebola? How did they know the guy who went to Dallas wasn't a terrorist with Ebola? Like, they don't track people, they don't follow them, they don't restrict them, they don't put them in quarantine federally. We're letting states do it. Why is that a state problem anyway?
I can't believe I'm going to agree with Jonas, because that never happens. But John, I mean, it seems like the government, they're spending a lot of time telling us to relax and not panic, yet they don't seem panicked enough about any of this. What do you think?
Yeah, they're very reactive. And when you talk about stopping the stupidity, you'd have to quarantine the entire Congress, most of Washington, D.C., and then
That's
never
not
let
a bad
them come
idea.
back. So
that's not a bad idea.
No, you're right. That's actually a very good idea. Look, what Gary Kay is talking about, I don't think he's talking about a blank check, my friend Gary. I think he's talking about the government needs to be reactive, proactive instead of being reactive. We stopped smallpox with about $300 million. It should have been a $2 billion a year disease. We could do so much more in getting ahead of this. Instead, the government is simply being reactive to whatever happens, and the government now is saying everything is fine. I don't think anybody really believes that. I'm not on the side that thinks Chicken Little that this is a pandemic, but I don't think the government is really ahead of this.
Yeah, Gary K., you want to respond? Because everybody piled on you there.
Hey, come on. Look, everybody knows me. I'm not a blank check writer. I want the government to do it reasonably and correctly. And the good news is maybe they are starting to react the right way with the quarantine. Everybody's yelling and screaming at them. But back to the main point is when it comes to terrorism and protecting the country and the people, spend the money, but spend it correctly and spend it wisely. And unfortunately, that and government doesn't go hand in hand.
No, I mean, there is a certain extent you wonder how much more money can actually make a difference. Emily, I mean, when we're talking about these lone wolf converts, I mean, a lot of these people are perhaps mentally unstable, who are just looking for a call for something to get behind, and are now coming out and in this one case in New York, wielding an axe at police themselves. How do you battle back against that type of insanity?
Yeah, that is really terrifying. But we have discussed a couple of things here that I think that we should clarify. You know, the quarantine specifically actually is a state and local mandate. That is not the federal government. It is on the state and local to be doing that. And then if we start talking about tracking, that gets a little scary. I don't know that we want to go all the way into tracking citizens as they move around, you know, all the time. We did see that they were able to find 3 Americans in the last week, the 3 young women that were going around halfway around the world to defect ISIS, and they caught them. So that actually seems like
I think
maybe
in that
something
case,
was
though,
going
they caught
right
them
there.
because their parents reported them missing and came in and found that they were gone and that they had taken their passports. In all these cases, you seem to read that they've gone online to these sites to be recruited, and they aren't being tracked after that. I mean, that's the thing that's sort of scary. Once you go on one of these sites and you're interested in the product that they're peddling and the government's not tracking you after that, that seems like it's a problem. Gary B., what do you think?
Well, I definitely think it is, and it gets to the bigger issue, and I think you mentioned it earlier, which I fall under the tent of hubris. I mean, why are we not doing the obvious things here? Look, I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback and say, oh yeah, I would have thought all these things. I know there's smart people working in the government, but it seems like we have this, like when Obama said, you know, basically, listen, don't worry about Ebola. There's no way it's going to get over here. We missed the guy that is now in Dallas. Getting on the plane because of the fever. We missed the doctor that's, going bowling in New York City. We're missing the obvious things. That's what worries me. Maybe we should start spending our money on just, take a step back and say, maybe we don't know everything and we need to learn a little bit more.
Jonas, what about that?
First of all, it's on Monday morning. We were talking about this quarantine situation weeks ago before this even started on this show. So anybody could have thought of this and did think of it weeks ago. This isn't a money thing. We're not talking about building nuclear submarines to fight the Soviet Union here. I've got a $10 a month account where I get a clear picture of my dog walking around my apartment than that Cax picture of the guy with the crazy. Lindsay Lohan had a thing on her ankle we could track her. How much does that cost? This is not anything to do with money. This is regular, cheap technology that we're not deploying, and there's no ideas to put it into plans because people are concerned about the rights of the Ebola victim allowed to go bowling when he wants. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I know, but then there is the slippery slope, and where does it end? And once we're tracking some people, do we trust the government to stop tracking others? I mean, I think of the IRS, and I feel like I don't trust them really to do anything. John, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems. We're not letting police officers be police officers. Look, we didn't have the tools to stop 9/11, but think about if we had. It cost us apparently about $3.3 trillion to our economy and thousands of lives lost. The police don't have the ability anymore to stop, question, and frisk. A guy walks in with a bag. It's hard to stop a lone wolf. They don't care. Some of them are crazy. Some of them have ideology. It's hard to stop them, but we need to let police officers be police officers and try to stop some of these things without worrying about so many people's rights of infringing.
We've had these resources in place now for years and all the money spent. And I took a plane yesterday and TSA gave me a piece of paper to prove that I was on the approved list. They still decided to go through my laptop even though I'm on a clear list. Then they checked my dog for a bomb.
Very suspicious.
They don't know what there's no organized
I think they were right in that case,
it.
Jonas. I would frisk you as well. Yeah, you look like a troublemaker. Thanks, guys.